We're gonna look at the Detroit News. Um, Plans to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer, overthrow government spoiled, officials say. Basically, friends, um, an extreme white ri- white. Why do I keep trying to say white ring? Um, Right wing militia group, combined with some fringe elements that were not in a formal militia, conspired together to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer and hold her in a secure location for a trial, aka an execution, in order to create a new, basically a stateless society based upon the Bill of Rights, the U.S. Bill of Rights. So they wanted to create a non-state within the United States, which it seems kind of like an oxymoron, but there you go. That is what they wanted to do, and they red pill theory. That's some real stupid shit you're saying in chat, okay? Some real stupid shit. Like, you know that we literally enslaved black people for like hundreds of years, right? Like, did they skip that part in like your history classes? Because like black people were literally not allowed to own property and were instead owned as property for hundreds of years and generations upon generations. So like the idea that we haven't historically kept out a lot of people from mainstream society is absolutely ridiculous and laughable in the extreme. Anyway, uh, yeah, basically, these people thought that these clowns, these absolute buffoons, thought that they were spec op soldiers and that they were going to, in the vein of 1776, be able to overthrow the tyrannical Gretchen Whitmer, who they hated because she enforced COVID-19 restrictions, because she didn't want the residents of her state to die unnecessarily. But because that threat is invisible and not armed with guns, these people, of course, thought that she was being overly dramatic and had some sort of plot to destroy the state. Now, if you recall in the video that we just watched with Donald Trump, who is, last I checked, the president of the United States, um, he was still saying that Gretchen Whitmer is hateful and has destroyed Michigan and is all kinds of bad news. Um, which is exactly building up these kinds of people who were plotting to overthrow her and execute her. So, like, let's just take a look at some of the details in the case. Organizers allegedly met starting in June, including at a Second Amendment rally in Lansing and in a Grand Rapids shop basement accessed through a secret door hidden under a rug. The plot also included at least 7 members of a Michigan militia known as the Wolverine Watchmen, accused by state officials on Thursday of targeting police, making threats to instigate civil war, and helping to plan Whitmer's kidnapping. Now, one of the few reasons that this plan was caught in the first place was due to the fact that they were targeting police. So basically, once these militias started making plans to target police stations and specific local police officers, um, there was at least 1 or 2 members in the group who decided that they were um, going to blow the whistle. They went to the FBI, told them what was going on, and agreed to become informants. So that's how we know so much about what was going on in this group. Um, the group of conspirators were conducting a surveillance on Whitmer's personal vacation home. Um, they were conducting armed drills. The neighbor for one of the areas in which they were performing drills, a nice old lady, was talking about how every day she was hearing shooting from the house next door in the evenings. And how now in retrospect she like shakes in fear because she had multiple times thought to go over to their house, and ask them to stop shooting because it was disturbing her nights, um, and what might have happened. Um, and these apparently after Donald Trump refused to condemn white supremacy and instead told militia groups to stand back and stand by. Um, Hate groups heard the president's words not as a rebuke, but as a rallying cry, a call to action. So after that, apparently the plans to initiate this kidnapping really ramped up. Um, and let's see. Yeah, they described elaborate plans to kidnap Whitmer. Um, let's see here. Yeah, the investigation is a result of months of work that culminated Wednesday night in the execution of a series of search warrants and arrest warrants, both in state and out of state, related to acts of terrorism under Michigan state law. These people, to be clear, are terrorists. They were about to instigate violence to achieve political ends. They had detailed plans. They also had attempted to obtain explosives, large quantities of explosives. They had tested out homemade explosives with additional shrapnel installed inside of them to increase the blast radius and the damage. It really, real serious stuff, guys. Like we're talking, they were planning a full on assaults of like federal facilities. Um, And so it was six people plus seven from the militia. There are a lot of there's a sizable amount of evidence that a lot of the people involved were in some way connected to the Boogaloo movement, which, as we talked about earlier, the Boogaloo Boys are basically far right extremist, loose coalition of far right extremist militias who believe in an upcoming race war and are attempting to kind of organize to prepare for the day that race war breaks out, and or for the day that they get the opportunity to try and start that race war. And one of the things that designates them as Boogaloo affiliates is the Hawaiian shirt. So this guy, in a series of his anti-government rants on TikTok, was wearing Hawaiian shirts. Let's see here. Yeah, here's his statement from one of his TikTok videos. The price of freedom is eternal vigilance, and indifference to this notion is the means by which the people can and will secure their own oppression. Wake the fuck up. Yeah, let's see here. They've got a level of evidence inside the organization that's going to make it hard to deny, said Rogers, noting that information from an undercover agent, informants, as well as a bugged phone and intercepted data conversations makes up like the bulk of their evidence here. It's real serious stuff, guys, and unprecedented. Like, good thing that the kidnapping didn't go off, but like serious plots to kidnap government officials are pretty scary stuff. I mean, very destabilizing when the governor of your state gets kidnapped. Okay, not a great thing. We should all be concerned. We really need to talk about how this stuff needs to be tamped down. Yeah, and we need to talk about how this stuff needs to be tamped down, but a large reason that so many of these people think that there is an existential threat presented by people like Gretchen Whitmer is because their president goes on mainstream news and talks about how Gretchen Whitmer is a threat to the state of Michigan, or how the Democrats are these unspeakable monsters who are trying to, for one thing, let in rapists and murderers. Or destroy the country, or rip apart the social bonds of the fabric of society. Like all of these things. Like Tucker Carlson will go on every night, and he's the most watched news anchor in the United States, entertainer, legally entertainer, in the United States, and he will talk about how Western civilization is under threat. The downfall of America is nigh because of people on the left. And stuff like that gets to nut jobs who join armed militias to defend America, and or at least what their idea of America is, which doesn't include like LGBTQ people or black people or anyone who's not white and Christian. Um, and these people will then concoct these crazy schemes to eliminate the people who they have repeatedly been told are working to destroy their way of life, their area, the place they live. Like, if you legitimately believed those things, wouldn't you be taking up arms too? Like, it makes sense given their worldview. So where's their worldview coming from? And it's from the right wing media that's constantly fear mongering about all of this stuff because it gets them the most views. Um, let's see here. Allport is not believed to have. Also, red pill theory. I think you just need to like calm down a little bit. Like you're getting pretty angry in chat. I'm white. I'm not. I don't think white. I'm not against white people. I don't think like all white people should die or anything like that. Obviously, I'm white. But also, I have studied history extensively and know that historically white people have been given huge advantages over black people or other minorities. Specifically, a lot of white men have been given a lot of advantages over minorities. There are all kinds of different privileges that people get from their different classes or race or gender. Like everyone has different ways that they are advantaged or disadvantaged in our society, and working to reduce the advantages and disadvantages is one way that we can make our society more just. But the constant fear mongering about the other and about how like black people are a threat to your way of life, and your way of life being a white Christian way of life is very obviously detrimental to our society. And it's something that we need to address. Um, let's see here. Um, yeah, in total, 19 state felony charges for firearms and terror-related acts were filed by Nezel and several individuals against several individuals known to be members or associates of the Wolverine Watchmen. Um, the suspects are alleged to have called on group members to identify the home addresses of law enforcement officers in order to target them, made threats of violence and to instigate a civil war leading to societal collapse, and engaged in the planning and training for an operation to attack the state capitol building and kidnap government officials, including Whitmer, according to a statement from Nezel's office. Um, let's see. Yeah, so like these people like usually consider themselves some kind of patriots, like they're defending real America, but in reality they're just terrorists who are unpatriotic, who hate America, because the real America accepts black and brown people. The real America is a place where queer people can live alongside straight people, where women and men are treated the same. Real America is an ideal that we should be striving towards. And for these people, real America is something that they hate with all of their hearts. If they had their way, they would disenfranchise as many people as possible in order to live their weird ANCAP or like anarcho-primitivist society. Okay, like that's what they want, and they would enforce their rights. They would enforce their ideals with violence, and they believe that they would come out on the top in that altercation. And that's why they're in favor of that ideology. Um, let's see here. Yeah, at the time, the FBI interviewed a member of the militia group who was concerned with the group's plans to kill and target police officers, and that person agreed to become a confidential source. Fox being one of the terrorists, referred to Governor Whitmer as this tyrant bitch and stated, "I don't know, boys, we gotta do something. You guys link with me on our other location system, give me some ideas of what we can do." Now, keep in mind, our president has also used very similar language. Somebody has to do something. Keeping it vague like this is what these extremist groups do all the time in order to secretly talk about or convey the need for someone to do something. And that nebulous something is often acts of violence or terrorism against the state. Yeah, and also, by the way, a lot of this was prompted by complaints about the state's judicial system and COVID-19 restrictions on gyms in Michigan. Like, the judicial system definitely needs to be reformed, but you can do that without kidnapping the governor and becoming a terrorist, guys. You can do that. You can run for public office to get your ideas across. You can find someone else who might be more eligible as a candidate and support them in a run for office. Like, those are things you can do to change your judicial system. Becoming a terrorist should not be an option for you. Let's see. I already talked about that. Fox and two other individuals located Whitmer's home and shot video and took photos of it as they drove by on August 29th. One of the individuals then calculated how long it would take local and state police to respond to an incident at the property. We ain't going to let them burn our fucking state down. I don't give a fuck. If there's only 20 or 30 of us, dude, we'll go out there and use deadly force, said Fox during the surveillance operation, according to an audio recording quoted in the affidavit. In an encrypted group chat, Garbin later suggested that demolishing a nearby bridge would hamper a response by police to the governor's home, according to the court filing. The September surveillance followed a field exercise at Garbin's property in Luther, Michigan, where the conspirators allegedly detonated an improvised explosive device made of commercial firework wrapped in shrapnel to test its anti-personnel effectiveness. Let's see. They stopped to check outside the underside of the highway bridge to check for places to attach an explosive charge and discussed detonating explosive devices to divert law enforcement officers from the area of the governor's home. She fucking goddamn loves the power she has right now, Fox said during the surveillance operation, according to the affidavit. I can see several states taking their fucking tyrants. Everybody takes their tyrants. Guys, like, kidnapping, arson, death, I don't care, Frank said, according to the affidavit. These are people who have been fully convinced that the people that they are against are the monsters they think they are. Now, that's true on the right. People on the right are fascists who rely on people like this, radicalized individuals, to perform stochastic terror in order to justify their law and order policies, right? Like, this is what they're relying on in order to clamp down in that regard, to prove that the issue is something serious enough that needs to be addressed. And on top of that, these people are being fed every day how Gretchen Whitmer is being like a tyrannical bitch by their mainstream news outlets. They're news outlets, guys. And they're, the logical conclusion for them, and it's reasonable given what they're consuming every day from their media, is that they need to kill these people. And I need to remind you, this is the quote. She fucking goddamn loves the power she has right now. And you know what? This is all over COVID restrictions on gyms. COVID restrictions on gyms. Just let that sink in. It's pretty insane. Because the governor of Michigan doesn't want her citizens to die en masse, these people want to go to her home, kill police officers, and murder her. That's insane. It's insane. It's just insane. Um, yeah. I think you all get the idea here. Um, but we live in real scary times. Just last week, we were talking about how the FBI had unveiled or sent out a memo very quietly during the presidential debate that indicated that white supremacists and far right militias were some of the biggest threats to American security. Well, right here is a perfect example, and thank goodness that we caught them in time. But this is pretty serious stuff, and it's probably going to get even worse the closer we get to the election. It's still like several weeks away. Um, all right, that was a bit heavy. That was a bit heavy, but we got through it. Um, also, neither of those things are good. I'm just a socialist, friend. I'm not a national socialist. I'm not a Nazi. I'm not on the far right like Nazis were. I'm on the far left. Okay, it's a big difference. And I'm not. You know what? I'm not even out here advocating for communism yet. My big point of advocacy is that we should embrace democracy in all of its forms. We should embrace democracy inside the workplace because I believe democracy maximizes freedom and well-being for all individuals. And once we do that, we can focus on how we move resources around and how that works. And those are the two steps I think necessary for us to get to a place of socialism in the United States. And I think that that would improve everything, basically across the board. We would have a lot of cultural improvements. In fact, last week I did a story about how if wages had kept pace with productivity in the United States, the average worker salary in the U.S. would be over $100,000. And I believe we could live in a place like that. We could live in a country where that sort of life is possible for everybody, where people aren't scraping by on a handful of dollars and tips every night in order to make their rent, or even scraping by on that amount and not being able to meet their rent at all currently under our current system under a pandemic. Um, but yeah, National Socialism is something very different, and it's kind of like how people say China's communist now, even though they're doing capitalism better than we are, right? Better than the United States is right now. Um, like communism is like the abolishment of like uh, you know socialism is basically democracy in the workplace and the abolishment of the commodity form, which is more complicated, but we can get into that if you really want. Communism is further the abolishment of the state. And as you can maybe see when you look at China and news about China, that China has a state. And in fact, they do not have democratic control of their workplaces. And in fact, uh, have not abolished the commodity form. So, like, by any stretch of the imagination, uh, China is basically just an authoritarian capitalist state with a communist party name slapped on top of it. Okay, like that's what China is right now. Um, and calling it like socialist or communist is kind of really just buying into their own propaganda and branding, much like thinking socialism is what the Nazis said socialism was. You're just buying into their propaganda, and honestly, you'd be laughed out of any like political science course, any history course. You would also be laughed out of um, if you tried to spout that kind of garbage in the classroom.